You know,
You get as many as you want.
I get as many as I want, so therefore it's going to be 3 words. What I really want to talk about is the trilogy of success: faith, family, and focus. I really appreciate the opportunity to share, because from the first devotional I came to, everybody should do this. And why they don't, it doesn't make sense to me until I start thinking through, and then it makes sense. And I'm going to touch on that today. So I appreciate the opportunity. My prayer before I start here today, or at a Get Motivated, or talking on the phone, is the exact same. Lord, allow me to impact 100% of the lives in this audience positively in one way, shape, or form. Only you know who you sent here to hear this message. Allow me to do the best I can to deliver that message, be a vehicle and of service to you. That's all I can control. All I control is a high intention and a low attachment. A high intention of imparting some good words into this room here today, and a low attachment as to what the net result of those words are. And far too often I think we tend to have a string attached to everything we do. And it's exactly the opposite. If we want true freedom, it's take away the strings. It's high intention of imparting something solid. Low attachment as to what that looks like. I was sharing with Lori a little bit earlier that one of my spiritual guides shares with me consistently, one man with an experience outdoes many with a doctrine. And so hopefully you allow me today to share some of my experiences in my path and how I've gotten here. In so many of my talks, I say, when you got a big enough what and a strong enough why, the how shows up. When you got a big enough what you want to accomplish and a strong enough why you want to accomplish it, the how shows up. So many times we focus on the how. How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to grow my business? It's the wrong question. It's the what and the why. And so with that, a long time ago, I developed my morning proclamation, and that is, I'm attracting everything into my life that I need to cause over $100 million in charitable giving. I had no idea how that was going to happen, but that was my declaration out to the world, was that I'm here. I want to do this. And so I took the first step back in 2007 when I had my first standalone book called Talking with Giants. There's 21 charities represented in the book. The whole book is about generosity builds prosperity, not the other way around. You don't prosper and then give, you give and then prosper. And I interviewed 15 amazing giants, and they all had this philanthropic bent to them. They all understood that this is the way it worked. And so I kind of disguised it by talking about their success, but then we made it to why do you give, who do you give to, who do you support, why should we support it with you, kind of thing. So that was kind of the first step. Well then, in almost every talk that I give, I also share Einstein's definition of insanity. Continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Now, do you understand, I've been talking to me during all my own talks. We all teach what we need most, right? I was getting there, but I wasn't quite there yet. And so I started recognizing that there was so much more spiritually for me. That I was there, but I wasn't there. I thought I was there. We all have this perception of where we are. I thought I had it dialed in, and I realized I didn't have it dialed in. I was nowhere close to that, right? So that was the second. And still one more that I talk on all the time. Growth equals awareness plus inspired action. If we truly want to grow, we first have to have the awareness that there's something to grow to, and then we have to take that inspired action towards it. So I ask audiences all the time, what would you be willing to stop? How about stop doing what's not working? Start doing what is. Try some new things on. The truly educated never graduate. Now, you understand, I've been saying this in the business world for years and years and years, and in training across all spectrums. Phenomenally blessed to do it, but again, it took hearing my own words over and over again to start to make that transition. Now, I was rebaptized February 5th, 1991, and so, boy, I was there, sort of, right? But you don't get it until you get it. So we're all a product of the choices we've made and the actions we've taken. It's just that simple. My choice was to live a life of purpose and passion. Through the guidance of some of my mentors, I created my life purpose statement. That's to inspire and empower others to serve humanity through living their life's purpose in spirit, love, and joy. To inspire and empower others, hey, that's all you. To serve humanity, we all need this, so that you can live your life's purpose in spirit, love, and joy. Closer to God than I ever had been. Love my family, friends more. Joy. Joy. I was having fun, but I wasn't having joy. My own life purpose statement I wasn't in tune with. I was on the road for 5.5 years. I spoke 1,500 times around the country and the world. I'd leave on Sunday, come back on Friday, speak 8 times a week. Joy. Fun, not joy. I had to kind of redesign myself. I had great opportunities. I made more money, did more things than I've ever done in my life than I'd imagined. And yet, I was still missing even my own life purpose statement. What I came to realize, and I wrote this down in church 2 weeks ago. Duh! It's one of those, some people call it an aha moment. Well, sometimes it's a duh moment, right? And the aha moment was Jesus, ... the original living example. Is that amazing that I finally figured this out? Again, now I'm so open to it. All these little things are so amazing to me. And it's happening daily. It's so cool. I was talking to a college about 2.5 weeks ago, and all of a sudden I said, you got to be a living example. You got to be a product of the product. You got to do what you do. I said, I'm pretty sure that Jesus could have come into the square in a golden chariot with a marching band, robes a-flowing, going, I'm the man. Pretty sure he could have done that. Not what he did. He rode in on a donkey. He washed feet. He met them where they were so he could take them where he wanted to take them. He was that living example. Immediately upon speaking, the next morning, Joyce Meyer said, let your life be your witness. Novel concept, right? Duh. Right? That same Sunday, Joel Osteen said, you can't argue a changed life. Do we have a theme going here? This triple confirmation, right, Lori, that we were talking about earlier? And so, faith, there's no better definition than Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance of what we do not see. It's doing things without evidence. How many of you have crossed the street lately? Man, do you have faith? Do you understand people get hit by cars? And yet you still, Philip, a little too close, sorry. But do you understand that this is all there? Gandhi even said, faith is not something to grasp, it's a state to grow into. So faith is an ever-evolving, ever-growing thing. Faith and fear are the yin and the yang. Both take belief. If you are stuck in fear, you're believing in the negative. But if you have faith, you can rejoice in the positive. And we have control of that. When you're stuck in fear, you're choosing to believe that negative. And there was a guy, I think he was fairly close, he used to talk about stinking thinking, right? That's all that is. When we're stuck in that state, we can embody this. And if you really think about it, all business prospers for only one reason: faith. It's the only reason a business prospers. Because why would you ever get in business? There's no evidence it'll work. There's no path that's been laid out. There's no assurance of anything. So the only reason business exists is because of faith. Think about it. And without it, no actions would ever be taken. Now, the first time I did this talk, I was going to Highland Park Methodist. I kind of got my outline sitting, like I said, I'm not a notes guy. I had my outline sitting there. And as I'm driving down Mockingbird from Las Colinas, all of a sudden I stop at a stoplight and I hear, broken. Where'd that come from? God, you're obviously trying to send me a message here that I'm supposed to somewhere in here talk about broken. What do you want me to say? Nothing. Not a word. Drive about 4 more stoplights. I stop and I go, okay, God, I heard the word broken. I know you want me to talk about broken. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I'm like, really? So now you're just like playing with me, right? I'm walking into the church and I said, I just want to give you one more chance in case you want to give me a little message here on what I'm supposed to say about broken. I'm all for it. Nothing. They introduce me. I come walking up. I start talking about faith. Hebrews 11:1. Confidence in what we hope for, assurance of what we see. You have to be broken. Now, not broken in being destitute, broken by being broken to your will. You got to be there for God's will. It's not about you. It's about Him. It's about what we do for the kingdom. It's really? You waited until now to give me the word? That's why I do this. I'm really serious. Because every once in a while, He'll just drop in a word as I'm going along. I couldn't be more blessed. I was in Singapore We were doing a speaker circle. I didn't realize Singapore was a 10% Christian country at the time this happened. We have 7 speakers on stage, and they were asking us a question. The question was, what's your highest value? So we got about 4,000 or 5,000 people out there, and Keith Cunningham is first. And he says, well, it's got to be integrity. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Greatest answer on integrity you've ever heard. Crap, that was my answer. Hand the microphone to Sean Higgins. Sean looks at Keith and goes, thanks, that was my answer. So I'm going to have to say, courage. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Best answer on courage ever. Crap, that was my second answer. Hands me the microphone, and I said, well, for me, it's got to be belief in higher source. For me, that's God and Jesus Christ. For you, it might be Buddha, Allah, Hindi, the universe, whoever you choose to call it, I'm fine with. My God says, be a living example. It's His job to do the heavy lifting and the conversion. I think we're naive to believe we're on this planet by ourselves, and therefore God's plan and timing for our life is absolutely perfect. So therefore, I believe you have to have faith. Because whatever you believe in, it's got to be bigger than you. And because of that faith, everything works the way it's supposed to. And I hand the mic, I look up, and I break out laughing. I said, you took over, didn't you? See, my prayer there was the exact same. Lord, use me as a vehicle. I had never said those words in my life. At the end, an hour and a half later, there's 4 Muslim women waiting at the bottom of the stage. And I go walking up, and they said, Mr. Scott, can we get our picture made with you? I said, well, that would be great. I said, please take this as it's intended. I don't understand your customs, but I didn't think you guys did a lot of this. Oh, we don't. Well, then why would you want to get your picture made with me? Because we want to honor you. We only take pictures of things and people that we want to honor. I said, well, that's really awesome, but why would you want to honor me? And they said, because you made us cry. I said, that's even a stranger reason to want to honor me. Why would you want to honor me? Because I made you cry. They said, because for the first time in our lives, you encouraged us to have faith. You didn't try to convert us. And for that we honor you. Now, I've told this story from stage many times since. I have no way to prove this, no way to disprove this. What if those 4 Muslim women were married to the worst terrorist in Southeast Asia? And what if, because of that interaction, they said we met 1 Westerner and 1 Christian? That was okay. And what if, because of that, their husbands either reduced or didn't create some kind of heinous act? I have no way to prove it. I've got no way to disprove it. What if we all just treated people with respect and were the living example Jesus asked us to be? What if? What could we do? So you got to develop a strong faith in God and Jesus Christ. Your higher source, whatever it is. Now, I'm assuming in this room, I think I got this figured out. In your organization, in your leadership support, Yesterday, as I prepped for this, all of a sudden, I had to write this down. I said, it's easy to trust God's Word when things are going well, and yet so many choose not to. And when things aren't going well, it's easy to lose the little faith we have, until one single verse shines in our lives. Finally clicks, and all of a sudden you realize, I can do all things through He who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. I was sharing with Lori that I got prophesized over in multiple Get Motivated prayer rooms. 3 different cities, 3 different times, different prayer leaders. All of a sudden they said, we've got a word for you. They prayed over me. They did everything before I went on stage. But 3 different times. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Now, I was caught up in the Get Motivated implosion. You think about a guy who doesn't understand what happened. 1 second you're on stage with 15,000, the next week you're on stage with 20,000 people in the audience, and the next week it implodes and it's done. 3 times. At that very event that imploded on me, Jeremiah 29:11. Boy, I wish I knew what these plans were, God. But how awesome is that, right? That's faith. You just got to fall into that. Family. I love these. You know the book, I Learned Everything in Kindergarten? Well, this is kind of one of those. This is from a great philosopher, Dr. Seuss. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. That's what family is, right? I love this one. Quite frankly, I'd attribute it to myself. I thought of families are like fudge, mostly sweet with a few nuts. Right? Now this is where I was looking through in Zig. Many marriages would be better if the husband and wife clearly understood that they were on the same side. How awesome is that? Just took me back as I was looking. I believe that being successful means that the balance of success stories is across all areas of your life. You can't truly be considered successful in business if your home life is in shambles. Great wisdom, Zig Ziglar. If God would have wanted us to live in a permissive society, He would have given us the 10 suggestions, not the 10 commandments. What amazing leadership was available about family through Zig and what he did. Kind of why do I do what I do? There's my family. See, my beautiful wife, Peggy. I was told, get a good job, get a house, get married, wife, 2.3 kids. Well, I got 2 kids and a dog. That's my 0.3. That's Willie and his Gene Simmons Kiss hairdo, our standard poodle. He's dressed as a Wolfman. It's a long story. My beautiful wife. My son was the purest kid in the history of ever. Graduated number 3 out of 659 at Coppell High School. Went off to UT, honors computer science, and never had a drink. Worked for our church from the time he was 13 on. He was awesome. Amazing kid. 5 days into his college career, he calls and he says, "Dad, I'm pledging a frat." Oh my God. They ruined my son in 5 days. That's what I didn't say it to him. That's what I thought. I said, "What is it?" He said, "Beta Upsilon Chi." I said, "It's not connecting." He goes, "Dad, Bucks." He said, "Still not connecting." "Brothers under Christ." What? In 5 days you found a Christian frat on UT's campus to support you? He goes, "Yeah, shouldn't everyone? I'm trying to grow up and be as good as my kids." My daughter goes off to Abilene Christian to play volleyball. As she was being recruited, one of the schools was St. Edward's down in Austin. I said, "This would be so cool. Your brother's already down there. We could come through and we could go to the games together." And she goes, "Dad, I don't think Austin would be a good place." I said, "Why not?" She goes, "I think I'd get in trouble. It's too big." I said, "Where do you want to go?" She goes, "Abilene Christian." I said, "Why?" "It's Abilene." Have you ever, what? She goes, "Well, the coaches are great, the teams are great, the support is great, but we have to go to chapel every day." I said, "You're choosing your school because you have to go to chapel every day?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to need it." Trying to grow up and be as good as my kids. And then my beautiful wife. I couldn't possibly have been on the road, done 1,500 talks, been away for 6 years without the support of my wife, Peggy. Now, it's just amazing, the family. Well, we've got a family here in this devotional, right? With everybody that Zig has touched. That's a family. The trilogy of success. Faith, family. Surround yourself with all that. And then focus. And this is where I'm so honored to have had this lunch with Zig and talked to him about this. But I said back in the late 70s, I read this book, See You at the Top, and this quote came out loud and clear. It's become my life mantra. It became it as a 17-year-old. You can have anything in life you want when you simply help enough other people get what they want. I never realized. I didn't say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life." It just was. It's just what happened is I took that. And so again, God's plan and timing for our life is perfect. We don't understand everything all the time as we get into the focus of what we do. I never set out to do what I do. And now I have less control over it than ever. You know what? I've always had less control. I just didn't, give it up. Right? I didn't surrender to it. Again, God's plan and timing is perfect. I've taught it for years that we can rarely understand it. I don't teach it that way anymore. I teach that God's plan and timing for our life is perfect. I'm going to suggest you can never understand it. But if you adopt that you can never understand God's plan or timing, 3 things happen immediately. The first thing is you gain great peace. Because if you can't understand the plan, why not just fall into it? Why not just live it? The second thing is you stop asking, "Why, God?" Because if you can't understand the plan, you can't understand the answer either. So you stop asking. But the third thing is you become tremendously present. That's where joy lives. Joy lives in the present. You can have fun and not be there, but you can't have joy until you're here in the present. As I was looking at quotes, Zig said, honesty and integrity are absolutely essential for success in life, in all areas of life. The really good news is anyone can develop both honesty and integrity. It's about focus. It's about putting yourself into, if you want that true success. Back in September, with the Get Motivated implosion back at the beginning of last year, I said, I'm done with this. This isn't what I'm supposed to do. And all of a sudden another seminar company said, well, you're like the best at this. We want you. And I go, I really don't think that's what God has in mind. And they said, well, we're calling you, so God must. What I came to find out is God doesn't always send all the things. He doesn't give you clarity. He did send me there, but I'll share with you not exactly for the reasons I thought. And so basically I went on stage, and there were about 4,000 people. It was probably, out of 1,500 talks or more that I've done in my life, the second debacle of my career. Here I am in front of 4,000 people with 2 monitors, my presentation that was completed 3 days earlier to present a product that I had never presented before. It was awesome. They went black. I had no presentation in front of 4,000 people. I didn't realize I tap danced, but I guess I did. Now, God helped me through that situation, but as far as a selling situation, it went horribly. And I literally came off stage, and I looked up as I was walking through 4,000 people, and I said, God, I will never be a hired gun again, except for 3 things. To build your kingdom, to share messages of hope and inspiration, and to teach and train others to do the same. Send me all of that you want. And that's what's happened. Novel concept. When you make that declaration, when you get that clarity as to why you've been put here. When Lori and I were talking about this, or I said, you know, if you ever want anybody to do this, I would love to do this. And she goes, absolutely. I went, what? Well, that was easy. All I had to do is ask. Grace Happens Too. Took an hour to put up that website so that we can start making a difference in people's lives. That was easy. All you have to do is have a little want to. Again, one of the concepts I teach all the time is become an asset to everyone you meet. That's your focus. An asset is a 5-letter acronym for a spontaneous servant every time. Become a spontaneous servant every time. The rest kind of takes care of itself. Doesn't it all go back to being that living example that Jesus presented the pattern for? Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you're doing. We're already doing this, but we don't get that we're doing it. You understand? Everybody's watching us every minute of every day. What example are you being? After months and months and months of encouragement, Bob Bodine, the author of The Power of Who, a great friend, said, Scott, you got to be reading the Bible. And I'm just like, well, but I watch Joyce Meyer every morning, and I watch Creflo Dollar and Joel Osteen, and I listen to nothing but Christian music, and I'm imparting good stuff into my head all the time. And I was telling him about a situation where in coaching, a guy said, how do I get this job? I said, well, the next time you talk to a prospective employer, simply ask him, what would make hiring me be the easiest decision you've ever made in your life? Now, I just finished telling Bob that, and Bob said, you keep on saying that you want to be a servant for God, to build the kingdom and do all this stuff, and you don't listen to your own coaching. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, have you ever asked God that question? And I said, no. He goes, good, I'm God, ask me. I said, okay, God, what would make bringing me into your service to help build the kingdom and do more for you the easiest decision you've ever done in over the centuries? And Bob said, read my book. And I said, but I watched Joyce Meyer. Read my book. But I watched Joel Osteen. Read my book. But read my book. I said, Bob, what are you saying? He said, read the book. And I said, oh my goodness. And that morning I went back and I literally started, I read Proverbs 1 through 6. And when I finished Proverbs 6, the phone rang and said, hey, we got a deal. Would you be available for 21 days? We think we could probably, I don't know, we could probably only pay you about 6 digits for this if it happens. What? Really? Now, did I do that to get that? No, it didn't work out that way, by the way. But I said, if this works like this, I'm starting at Genesis 1. So, August 7th, I started at Genesis 1. I cannot make these stories up. I started at Genesis 1. I read Genesis 1 through 8. I committed to a half hour a day as a minimum of reading the Bible. At 6:40 that morning, I stopped. I got through Genesis 8. At 10 o'clock, or at 6:50, Tom Ziglar sent me a text and said, can we talk? I want to look at doing business together. And we had a 10 o'clock call that day. The next day, I'm Genesis 9 through 16, and I get a message. We want to look at you to do. Really? So last Sunday, by the way, I finished Hebrews yesterday. I've got just about this much left since August 6th of reading the entire Bible through. Do I comprehend it all? No, that's why I'm talking to my buddy Ron White. I need some memory lessons, dude. I shared with Pastor Keith Kraft at Elevate Life Church the other day, a week ago Saturday. I said, Keith, I got why I've never read the Bible before. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I finally figured out why I never read the Bible before. And he said, what is it? I said, I'm a sales guy. And he goes, what do you mean you're a sales guy? We never read instruction manuals. He said, what? I said, Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth. I've never read the instruction manual. You know what? I submit. I get it. I surrender. God put that in there, so every time I talk to somebody in business, I can say, I get what salespeople do. They don't read the instruction manual. Start reading. It's the Bible. There's a German philosopher, and actually pessimist, Arthur Schopenhauer, that said it this way: all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. That's our Christian path. That's the trilogy of success. Faith, family, focus. We can take our focus and focus. We can put it where it needs to be. Now, I said something about that lunch that we finished, that Zig and I had, and we did a hostage exchange. He signed a book to me, I signed a book to him, and when we were done, he leaned in and he said, Scott, if you're ever discouraged or lack the encouragement you need, always remember that at least at one point, even Moses was a basket case. I leaned in and I said, Zig, you still got it. And he said, I always will. That's my last time talking to Zig. What an influence. Again, we all have the opportunity to do this. I thank you for this opportunity. You know, we can all make a difference, whether it's through the Grace Happens Now cards or something else, or throwing somebody a smile or doing anything. We've all been phenomenally blessed. In one of my coaching sessions, I talked with one of my clients and we were talking about grace. And I'm an acronym guy, so it came like this: God recognizes and congratulates excellence. Grace. That's what we've been put here for. God bless. Thank you so much. Can we pray? Lord, I thank you for this opportunity and this time of sharing. I thank you that you definitely took over and spoke some words that we all needed to hear, and me especially. We feel so phenomenally blessed that you take us over, especially when we allow that surrender. Thank you for this organization. Thank you for the living example that Zig was and this organization continues to be. Lord, know that we're here to be of service to you, and we honor you. In your Son's holy name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.